So basically, yeah, like that is what
So,
would make
so
this
that's
unwrap bad, right? Is like it's impossible to
and that's
know.
why you would,
Hmm?
yeah,
Oh, go on,
that's why
sorry.
you would hide your seams, right? Because you're going
Yeah,
to get that split
exactly. So we have to have
faces.
seams. Like you can't not have seams. So you have
Yeah.
to allow them to do as little damage as possible. And it's a judgment call,
Hmm.
right? So but the basic premise here is that on like a cube like this, the idea that you want to think about is sort of hinging open the cube, right? So the idea really
Yeah.
is that I would want that face to kind of come up like that, right? And
Yeah.
then like
And then the whole back to drop off and the sides to drop
yeah,
down.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like these, we want these to kind of hinge
Yeah.
out, and then like we kind of have already mathematically created the least amount of seams to allow this to unfold. It's just that it's not unfolded because it's in
Yeah.
3D space. So then we would, whoops, swing
Yeah.
that one down, right? So there's an equivalent two-dimensional, and like if you know, that's a two-dimensional
Flipped
shape
what?
here,
Yeah.
right? Two-dimensional
Yeah.
representation of the cube. Now, the cool thing about this, in my mind, is that like literally every shape is some variety of a cube when you really think about it. So as long as you know how to unwrap a
Okay.
cube, you can unwrap anything, right? So and I'll just show you some examples. So basically, the idea for the cube is like again, we want to snip off like the top, and you can do this iteratively, right? Like if I hit unwrap, Blender's actually going to fail to solve because I've given it nothing. So I'm going to clear that unwrap, and then I'm going to try again, and it's like, hey, I can't do anything. So if I mark a seam on these
Yeah.
top three here, right, and then do the unwrap, it's managed to solve the top face, and it has technically given a
Okay.
valid unwrap for all of the bottom ones, but like it's really
It's
shit
going to
because
be
there's heaps of
very warped.
distortion. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we go up here to the top, here, where are we? Am I blind? Yeah. Up here on the like viewport, the overlay thing, we can turn on the
Yeah.
UV stretching and we can show the angle stretch. See how bad that
Oh
is?
wow,
Yeah. So
I've never
basically
even
it's saying
seen.
like these pixels here have very minimal stretch, so when you texture a pixel here, it will roughly correspond to a pixel on the
It.
map.
Yeah.
But these ones have really
When you get into
high
the middle,
angle
it's
stretch.
gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, if I chuck on a grid and just show you what that looks like, give me a sec. UV grid. And this, like, putting one of these grids on can be really helpful if you struggle with unwrapping. I don't really bother with it anymore because it's just so
Yeah.
intuitive to me, but it would actually make a lot of sense for a beginner to just chuck a UV grid material on and have a look. There, you can see
Okay.
exactly what's happening, right? So it's saying, like, the
Mm-hmm.
pixels in one of these corners are, like, kind of bad, but still sort of
It's
okay.
fine.
And then the
Yeah.
triangulation just gets so extreme that it can't possibly, you could not possibly texture on this.
You couldn't paint that.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
exception would be like, well, what if you just want solid blue? Well, I guess this unwrap would be fine, but it's really lazy, you know?
Okay.
Um, but
Yeah.
so in general, yeah, we just want to kind of repeat the process. We want to unfold like the next faces so I can mark a seam, unwrap again, and then check, right? And so again, now we're getting much less distortion, but the layout's a bit sketch. You know, like that's kind of
Yeah.
leaning. It's like at an angle. This is at an angle, and like these, the distortions come down a lot. We could technically texture most of this, but not all of it. So we just keep like snipping open, looking like for the point where we get as little blue as possible, right? And the reason that I only had to do that one there is because the top face here, marking this seam, already satisfies sort of the criteria of allowing the back to fully open, you know? So that's why
Yes.
it just magically, boop, just like looks, you know, like a solid unwrap now,
Yeah.
right? So, that's basically like how to unwrap like a cube, essentially. This is sort of like the minimum
Okay.
viable unwrap for a cube.
Yeah.
You know. Now, okay, well, if we look at the other shapes, right? We look at a cylinder. A cylinder is just a round cube. You know what I mean? So we would unwrap
Yeah.
this in
So
an
you'd mark
incredibly similar way.
bottom one bar, one edge going down, and
Yes.
the top edge and the bottom edge.
Basically, yeah, we would take the top off of the top, and if we wanted to copy the cube exactly, which we don't have to, and we probably won't most of the time, right? We can leave one edge like cleared, so that allows this to hinge up as like a flap, you know?
Ah, rather than like separating completely, it will still
Yeah.
be like almost attached by a little. Okay, that makes sense. And then would you mark either side of that?
Well,
Like, oh no, you
yeah.
would mark the opposite side. Yeah,
Well,
because then it
so
would unwrap to the bar.
Yeah, so if
Okay,
we
that
follow the
makes
cube analogy exactly, right, then we could mark all four corners and then unwrap this. Now this
okay.
again is like technically a correct unwrap, and it's smushed, it's packed those together, but those are actually separate, right? This is a
Separate.
correct unwrap in that it does work, but it's like not necessarily ideal because like we don't actually need these seams here, and we only got lucky
Yeah,
in that Blender kind of stacked them all together, but see how
join
these
them.
two don't actually continue across that edge, right?
Yes.
So again,
Yeah.
if we're texturing in like Substance Painter or something where we're painting in the 3D viewport, we're going to mitigate a lot of the damage caused by the seams, but not always. And in some cases, it's actually a huge pain to
Yeah.
like get around them. So it's not like it's this subjective
Yes.
common sense requirement is what I'm trying to say, right? So we want to minimize seams.
Yeah.
So the cool thing about this is that because we've already chopped the whole top, then we just need like one seam on the long
Yeah.
side to like open it.
Opposite side of
Yeah. Yeah.
the strip, like the column, the joining column that you
Well,
did.
it's
So it would
more
like unwrap.
like we have to put the seam somewhere. So think about like if this was on a human, right? Typically human
Yeah.
arms might rest like downward by your body side a lot of the time. Like the natural human
Yeah.
pose would be kind of like this.
The armpit.
Yeah, so we could tuck the seam up under there, you know? So it's not necessarily has anything to
Okay.
do with this like hinge flap thing. You could put it on the side there if you wanted, right?
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So it's just about finding convenient places to hide them. Now regarding like the hinge flappy thing, almost always I won't actually do this because it's not really necessary to like keep them so tight together like this in the unwrap. You can, but
Mhm.
you don't have to. More often than not, you get more utility by just having the elements of a natural cylinder be completely separate
Yes.
because that allows us...
Okay.
Get out of here. Oh, sorry, I'm clearing the seam. I'm not actually marking it. Give me a sec. That mark seam. That allows us to do this. See that? How, like, we can say, right, well, we'll take all of the horizontal elements of the cylinder, maybe we'll put them over here, and then all of the circular elements will stack over here with, like, potentially other circular elements that aren't so squared up, right? So you don't actually
Yeah.
have to join them together. It's just, like, the hinge concept is sort of a mimetic device to think about, like, well, the cylinder really is just a cube that behaves slightly differently, right? We unfold the top and bottom, and then we naturally unfold all of the surrounding, like, circumferal faces, if that even is a word, by virtue of it being
Yeah.
smooth and only needing an edge on one side, right?
Okay.
So the cylinder is very similar to the cube, is what I'm trying to say, right? Now,
Yeah.
if we look at, like, a cone, well, we've seen this movie before, right? Like, a cone is exactly the same as a cylinder, but with one really small side. Like, with the top just, like, being smushed.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if the cone is, like, really long, like this, then naturally we sort of have to snip a side open. So I'll snip one side open, snip the bottom off completely, and unwrap this.
Yeah.
Because for this to not have this edge here, right? This face and this face that are so far away from each other on, like, the cone, they would literally have to be all the way around like this, and then
To meet.
yeah, to
Okay.
meet, and we would have to
Yeah.
introduce a lot of distortion to actually facilitate that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so eventually would look like this, and then this would all be smoothed, and
Yeah.
long story short, your unwrap would just look like this, project from view, like that.
Yeah.
Which doesn't have much angle stretch, but
Yeah.
it will have area stretch, right? So we've got angle, and we've got
I
area.
don't use project from view all the time.
Yeah, well, so this...
What are you talking about?
I actually love it. I use it all the time, especially on like 2D, like stylized weapons
Yeah.
and stuff, where you can just, shoot it from one side.
Just do the whole side. Yeah. Yeah.
So on a really long cube like this, a really long cone, which is going to have heaps of area distortion if we try and flatten that into two dimensions, we're kind of compelled to open it up. And you can actually see how, like, as the cone gets longer and longer, this angle is going to get shallower and shallower, which sort of inversely means that if the cone is really shallow, like really short, then the utility of splitting it on the side is kind of lost. See how that angle's getting larger and larger as the cone gets, like, shallower and shallower?
I think you've still got no. There's the distortion. I was going.
Yeah.
Oh no, you've still got no like distortion. Would that not really work?
It's there. There's distortion. It's just like there's just not enough to worth caring about, But it's still there. And the reason that we know it's there is that when we give it like an edge here, this is all. We only need one seam here to mathematically allow this to, like, fully unwrap. So There shouldn't actually be any, like, actually, yeah, there shouldn't really be any area distortion here. It's just that by virtue of this opening up, it's almost like we can feel that there is pressure in the shape trying to unfurl. You know what I mean? Whereas if I clear this seam and then unwrap the shape, there definitely is distortion here. Maybe angle.
So
angle.
if you've got a long, tall, so if you've got like a long cone, you
have to split it open on the side.
Yeah. But if it's shorter,
yeah,
there's utility in not.
This goes the exact same for like any shape, right? Because think about it, right? As this gets flatter and flatter and flatter, it's becoming more two-dimensional, right? Like
the angles are more.
Yeah, this is just a 2D shape. This is just the unwrap of this shape. Done, you know? Whereas this is a three-dimensional shape, so that third dimension introduces a discrepancy. Yes, it needs to be able to like opened up, right? Now the cylinder is exactly the same, right? Like if I clear all of this stuff off the top, and just for convenience sake, I'm just going to delete the bottom so that we can only focus on this, and I try and unwrap this, heaps of distortion, right? Because it's like, it's trying to essentially... It's going to try and fail to kind of do this, where it's like smushing it all together like that. And then, But as this gets shallower, like as this becomes less 3D, see how like suddenly that changed?
Yeah, there you go.
But it's still very distorted. Like this is still quite distorted, right?
Yeah.
Like this face is huge, but on unwrap it's incredibly small, right? As the shape gets shallower,
would you still back a seam?
No.
Is it just like a judgment call for?
Yes, it's in a large, like this is still a three-dimensional shape like a cylinder. This still needs a seam.
Yeah.
Right. But what I'm trying to communicate is that as the shapes become more two-dimensional, like down to here, this judgment call changes, right? In that, okay, well now the top face is actually taking up a lot more room, and the side faces, like maybe if it was very shallow, we wouldn't care about the seam at all. Right? Because all we're doing is we're getting like a touch of distortion on the side, and that's opening and flattening like this.
Yeah.
That's kind of just worth it, you know? But this becomes especially apparent if the shape starts curving. Because the curvature sort of naturally allows an easy transition into two-dimensional space. Right? So if this was like the iris of a character, there's no reason to treat this like a cylinder anymore, and we can instead sort of start treating it like a flattened cone. Right? And so if we unwrap this now... This is what the unwrap for like the iris of a character would look like, as opposed to us trying to treat it like a cylinder, where, you know, it has like a primary cap that we open, like we split here, and mark that seam, and then mark this seam, and then split that open. Does that make sense? Right?
Yeah.
So as it becomes like, you know, closer and closer to like a flat shape, as we can represent it more easily in 2D, the demand placed on us to use seams starts to disappear, is basically the point, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of like why cones are a bit interesting, because you can either have a very shallow cone, which should really be unwrapped like this. Whoops, let me give it a bottom as well. Like a really shallow cone is basically just two discs, but a really deep cone becomes much more like a cylinder, where it needs to be opened up at the side.
Yeah.
Right? It just depends.
And would you be, you wouldn't be marked sharp in these as well? Is it marked?
Well, we'll get into the sharp stuff in a bit, because that's very specific to baking. The sharp stuff comes into play with baking normals very, very particularly, not unwrapping, right? So we'll just keep them separate for a second. Okay, so, you know, that's... honestly, if you just, like, look at every shape like that, that's pretty much how you unwrap, like, literally every shape, right? Like, if you look at a UV sphere, and it's called a UV sphere because by default, like, it's laid out in UV space fully and without, like, you know, mathematically. That's pretty much not really how we would unwrap most spheres. This is kind of like... Remember how we were talking about the iris of the character? Like...
Yeah.
You could probably easily get away with just running a seam down the horizontal line and unwrapping that. So you're gonna get distortion, but, you know, it's pretty well represented.
Kind of negligible.
Yeah, like...
Yeah.
Again, a judgment call. A sphere is like the worst shape to unwrap because it's perfectly curved, but yeah. What's an exception to that would be a subdivided cube, right? If I subdivide this cube.
Okay.
And I smooth
so I do use the round, what is it, the round cube, the sphere cube, mesh quite a lot.
Yeah, well, this is a sphere cube. We just have a natural unwrap here from the cube. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay.
we have really awesome like topology that just supports like unwrapping this literally as
The
if it
same
were a
unwrap
cube.
as the
It's
cube.
it's identical, yeah.
Yeah.
Now if you didn't want to do that, like because maybe this is a sphere cube for like a character eyeball, we can still do the exact same thing where we
Mm.
just chop across the horizon and just unwrap that.
Okay.
Same thing. We're not our hand
No,
isn't
okay.
forced.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we start getting onto like more complex stuff. Like we want to unwrap a humanoid. Well, the reason I modeled this humanoid like as a blocky cube is because the humanoid again is just a collection of cubes, right? Same thing as the cube itself. We're basically going to look at a human, like even a human that has like pudgy fingers like this, right? Whoops, give me individual. Right? I mean, these are very bad fingers,
Yeah.
but they are still cubes, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
so if I pull these out, well, we could even say like maybe what we'll do is we'll treat like the whole palm structure as like one self-contained cube, and so we'll sort of unwrap this as a cube. So we'll run a seam around here, and then we will begin unwrapping these as a series of cubes, you know? So
Okay.
on the human body in general, we've got sort of a central large cube here, and then several cubes
Yeah.
like attached to it, right?
Yeah.
So we can immediately sort of say, right, well, the first thing we should at least probably do is kind of like separate these cubes off from each other.
Like your arms and legs.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just, and it gets, there's a lot more nuance to this when you actually start talking about characters, but this is a really good way to like visualize them. Right?
Yeah.
Now, like, you know, humans aren't exactly always going to be like boxy, right? Like if it's a Minecraft character, they will be, but
Yeah.
in general they'll be smooth. So
Yeah.
as we've kind of established before, a cylinder is just a rounded cube, right? So we have our central cube, and then we need to run a seam somewhere, right? A lot of the time,
Or
well, it depends on the character, but like a lot of the time, if the character is symmetric, for instance, like if we're trying to save texture space, it'll be modeled like this, right? And then the other side will be flipped over. So we kind of our hand is a little forced, right? In that we may as well, we're gonna get a natural seam because we're mirroring UVs. So we may as well just kind of like pick a seam that's on the back of the character and chuck one here, you know? Characters are a little interesting in that, like in a third-person game, they're pretty much always going to be viewed from the back, and in like a cinematic game, most games they're going to be viewed from the front. So that sort of also leaves us with another good candidate is like maybe underneath and at the sides. We could split the character that way and like open them up, you know, at the sides. Because again, if our hands are going to be naturally resting down here a lot of the time, right? Well, we're sort of obscuring that seam quite readily. Like again, not perfectly, but pretty decently, you know? So that's a good potential place for it. So if I mark a seam there and then we have a look and we unwrap this, again, we have distortion, but this is a highly organic, very curved surface. We're always going to have some distortion. There's maybe down here at the bottom between the legs, like this is the area down here. We could consider chopping this open and then unwrapping again, and that does free like a lot of distortion here, but it also sort of opens the character up, right? Like this. So that's potentially another judgment call is like, well, maybe we leave the distortion down in the crutch just so that our unwrap stays quite neat, you know? So maybe if I clear that and then unwrap this again, yes, there's distortion down here, but it's distortion in an area that's not really noticed, and in exchange for that distortion, we just get like a nice, neat and tidy island that we can work with, you know? So the long and the short of it is, what I'm saying is that the torso is again just like another cube, or more like a cylinder, right? That we then separate the appendages from, and then pick a place to put a seam to allow it to open, right?
Would that seem like the difference between doing down the front and sort of down the side? Would you tend to carry that seam on like down and under the leg and back up the inner leg, or does it not really matter if you think of like your legs and arms and stuff as separate like islands or separate like
I will try and keep
things
them
that you're
separate.
unwrapping?
Once we've split it off, right, we have no like philosophical or technical requirement to continue this seam this way
to match okay, because always in my head that
it feels
natural,
kind of neat,
like
but we totally don't have to, right? Like that's they're going to be separate islands. So at this point, we're already forced to have them as be separate areas on the texture set. So now,
Anyway.
if they're going to be separate, we may as well just do the best job we can in each individual little domain, right? In like each island space, if that makes sense, right? So, again, depending on the character, like you could send this unwrap down here and continue, but like when we're unwrapping cubes, we typically don't run a seam down the middle and unwrap it like this. Like, again, we can, like that's sort of valid, but like we typically wouldn't. So treating this more like a cube, well, maybe the bottom, or like, again, a rounded cylinder.
Opens, okay, yeah.
Which is just a cube. But the base of this, like, could round out, right? Like, you could take that, snip that off, right? So now the bottom of the foot's good, the body's pretty good.
Yeah.
But we still have, like, this tube that we haven't dealt with. We need to find a way to split it open. And again, following that, like, well, why don't we continue the seam? Well, we only put that seam there because we kind of know, like, arms are kind of sort of going to obscure it. And there's, like, no other good place to put it, right? But on a thigh, there's actually a great place to put it, which is in here on the inner thigh. Because that's obscured most of the time, right? Almost all of the time. So this is where, like, once we've gotten to this thing, we don't need to continue that anymore. We could just mark a seam here.
Okay.
And then try this.
Yeah, that's good.
And now we're good.
There we go.
Right?
Pretty good, yeah.
So we're starting to really get there. And like with the base of this character, like if you want to keep this like thigh region and the sort of heel region like contained to each other, you could clear that seam there to allow it to hinge up.
Yeah.
And that would be fine. But the reason I mention that here is like typically characters aren't actually made like this. There's sort of like yet another cube, you know, another series of shapes.
And then another cube, and then another 5 little cubes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right? So in this case, where the character has a foot, it doesn't really make sense to have this seam anymore. So we'll get rid of that. I think I got an interior face here, maybe. No, let me just try and clean this. Cool. We still, like, the inner thigh is still a pretty good place to send the seam, so we can, like, run that all the way down there. And then, well, like a cylinder or a cube, we kind of need to open the cap up, right? Like, get the bottom kind of off and self-contained. So the heel of our character can go there, we can get rid of this, and now we can unwrap this and see what we get. So we are introducing distortion, but the question is, like, is the distortion worth it? On a really blocky character like this, you would probably snip these edges here to allow that front to, like, unwrap more, to open up. See how I've, like, dropped a lot of distortion there?
Yes.
But again, characters typically aren't like that, right? They typically have, like, rounded, smooth, like, feet. But, like, conceptualizing it in that, like, more... like blockier shape
way
just kind of allows us to reason about this mentally a lot better. But like this is more like what a character's foot is probably going to be like, some sort of rounded surface, and like probably even on the sides here. I'm just going to like butcher this, so merge that down.
Oh.
Yeah, I just did that in like the most roundabout possible way. So this is more like what a foot is going to look like, right? There's going to be some level of rounded organicness, like to the shape at large. So now the utility of like snipping the front off to reduce distortion is just like lost, right? Like we don't, like that's going to buy us like nothing, you know?
Yeah.
Right? Like it opens up that much. It relieves some pinching. And like this is a really common thing with beginners. And like I used to do this all the time, is I would be like, I can almost intuitively feel that this area wants to open up. It's like under tension. So if I snip it and that opens up, well, isn't that a good unwrap then? Not really, because we're just introducing new seams. And it's only reducing the
tiniest bit
it's
of
reducing
warping
like a bit
on
of
the
warping
area.
right? On an area that's kind of organic in general and is naturally going to be prone to warping. So we just don't bother, you know? The heel is interesting because the heel is like always on the ground, right? Like it's always like this, pointing at the floor like that. So the only time you see the heel is when the character is like mid-run cycle and their legs are picking up like that. Maybe then you see it, right? So in general, like, we can essentially unwrap the character's heels fully as their own self-contained island, but not only that, we can kind of actually shrink them a touch and, like, put them somewhere we don't care about to buy back, like, texture space elsewhere. You don't always want to do that, like, but, you know, some of the time it's kind of free real estate. If you just shrink that down, you just get a little bit more texture space, you know?
One thing I noticed with Unwrapping David was that even though I had the two separate meshes, like the hair mesh was separate, it still seemed like they were sharing like a UV space.
Yeah, they can be totally separate.
Like they overlap. What I guess my question is, what dictates whether like two separate meshes are going to share that UV space? Like,
so textures, basically, right? So the point of like our character or our unwrap is to describe our three-dimensional object in two-dimensional space so that we can texture it, right? So if we know they're going to share the same texture, like if this main character has a particular iconic sword, right? They are always seen with this sword. It's like a big part of their character design. They're never seen without it.
Okay.
It is essentially like them wearing a necklace that is always on their body, right? Then this sword is going to always be on the same, like it's always going to be using the same texture. So in this case, we would, let me just give this the worst unwrap ever. In this case, sorry. Also, when we do our unwraps, just worth mentioning, the scale of our mesh matters. Like, see how when I unwrapped that, the sword came out huge relative to the body? It was because the scale was wrong, right? So if I apply those scales, now our unwraps are going to be better. It's going to be relative to the character, right?
So you kind of want to apply scale, I guess, to everything before you start your unwrapping?
Yeah. Like, you know, that's not always the case. Like, maybe he has one sword on the right, but then he has another copy of the sword, which is slightly smaller. Right, we may as well just use the exact same unwrap because it's the same sword, and so I don't have to bother applying the scale here and doing new unwraps because maybe this is just a tinier version of the same one, you know? Right, but in general, yes. So, yeah. So what determines the fact that these are going to share UV space? It's because we, like, as character designers, have said, well, this is his special sword. You know, he's always going to use it. It's always going to be here. It's going to be on the same texture set.
I think I meant like physically, like what would you if you had, so say there was one scenario where both of these were going to share that space and there was a scenario where they weren't gonna, you didn't want them to share the space, it was a sword you only had that every now and again. What practically, like, what forces that difference, if that makes sense? Like two different materials
two different
materials. Them.
So
anything that shares material is going to share a UV space essentially.
Yeah, let me think about that, because I think that might actually be on the money. Anything that shares a material is going to share UV space. Yes. Yeah, that is true, I think. There is, like, a mild exception where we can actually use more than one unwrap and, like, start mucking with things that way. But yes, I think that's basically, like, when I was saying, like, the texture is what determines it. The texture is configured by virtue of the material, right? We give this a material called M underscore main character, right? We give the sword, in the first example, the sword would be on that same texture, which means they need to be on the same, like, material. Or maybe not the same material, but maybe like M underscore main character underscore sword. So I guess, it is, like, even though these have two different materials in this case, because maybe the sword is, like, more metallic, like maybe we want to adjust, right? But in general,
like,
but in general, like in this example, like for a Final Fantasy character, they're always seen with this sword. We may as well just have the sword on the same texture set because we want to use, like, as little resources as possible, right? So this is, again, it's just the judgment call. It's always judgment calls.
Would it be when you opened those in edit mode together and unwrap them at the same time? That's what dictates going on to that same. So maybe on David, I selected both meshes and just went to unwrap, and they were. But I swear I did them separately, and they were like overlapping.
That shouldn't be. That might have been a sheer fluke because, like, it's totally possible that when the hair unwrapped, it placed it here, and when the body unwrapped, it placed it in a different space, and they weren't unwrapping. David basically only has.
No, I had to move. I had to move them to not overlap in the UV space. But I was like, this is weird because they're two separate meshes. And I thought I'd unwrap them separately, and I think they also had different materials, but they were still, like, occupying the same piece of UV paper, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, like, so look at this character.
Like, I wanted them on two separate sheets of paper, and they were on the same.
Yes. So, like, on this character, they're unwrapped, right? Sorry, pardon me, I just burped. And they take up as much of the island, as they can sort of have. This sword is then also
Yeah.
unwrapped, and it's naturally going to try and take up as much of the island as it wants, right? Now, this overlapping
Yeah.
is totally fine if they're using two separate textures, but if we want them to share the same texture,
Yes.
I need to physically take this sword and move it off,
Okay,
right?
maybe I did have the same material on them.
Yeah,
Let me just open David quickly and double check. So I'm trying to basically backward engineer and figure out
yeah.
why that was happening on David.
Well, but the key point
Maybe I
being
could.
is that, yeah, if you select both of them and hit tab, you don't have to fuck around trying to, like, not allow them to overlap, right? You can just unwrap, and Blender is smart enough to not stack
And
the islands
they'll
on top of each other,
sort, yeah, yeah.
right? So keep that in mind. But yeah, philosophically, when do we make the call? It's like, it just depends on what textures you need. If your art director is like, hey, you're only going to get like 3 textures to pull off a sword, shield, helmet, and like body, then like you just have to put them on the same texture. Your hand is forced.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Do you?
They've got.
Yeah.
Yes, that does make sense. I'm still trying to. I think I'll just have to play around a little
Yeah.
bit and figure out exactly what I did there because I've got two separate materials: his head and
Yeah. So look,
his head and his hair.
well, look at it like this, right? If I get rid of, like, if I take these objects and give them no materials, they're going to unwrap however the hell they want. The unwrap has nothing to do with the
Yeah,
material. It's just that
yeah.
we decide whether or not to stack islands based upon whether or not they share textures and materials, right?
Okay,
So, but Blender doesn't know about, like, the material doesn't factor in. Like, I could give this like 20 materials and it wouldn't care, you
okay,
know? So the actual
okay.
physical process is when I grab a mesh and I select everything and I unwrap it, it's going to try and use as much of the
Yeah,
UV space as it possibly can. And then if I do a different unwrap on a different prop, they are two totally separate and distinct things. They don't talk or communicate to each
okay.
other. They don't care. Only when I unwrap them together will they try and not stack on top of
Yes.
each other, right?
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Hey.
Um, okay, so the hand and whatnot is basically sort of the same, right? Like we want to take like treat it like a boot, I guess, right? Like we could snip the hand off at the wrist, and then typically for a human hand there's going to be a series of fingers. I'll just do a hand unwrap very quickly. Whoops. Give me a sec. Like this. And he's only going to have 3 fingers, but you'll be able to generalize this to the other case.
Yeah.
Like this. Typically, hands, the geometry will almost always have a loop that runs around the horizontal kind of plane. It bisects the hand into 2. Like
Okay.
this, right? So if I grab that and just start selecting along like that.
Chops it in half like a sandwich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's like we've got the top, we've got the bottom. Done. Right?
And the bottom.
Hands are probably the easiest thing in the world to unwrap. It's literally just like there's a top and there's a bottom.
Okay, would that be good enough?
Yeah, this is done. That's how I would unwrap pretty much every hand.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
There's cats fighting in my garden.
Cute. Yeah. That's it. That's hands. The face we've covered, right? Like you basically want to run like a seam sort of up the back to the forehead. Like this.
Yeah, and then
That's it.
I notice a lot of people like split. Oh, okay. I was
Yeah.
gonna say a lot of people tend to do like a line almost like along the eyebrows
Yep.
to like split that front.
You could. You don't have to. Hold on, let me turn off
Okay.
the mirror. Yeah, this works. I do this sometimes. A lot of people don't though, because seams on the human face are going to be very obvious, right? It's like it's right there.
Yeah.
So some of the time it's just better to suffer the distortion that comes with not having it.
Yeah.
But this gives
Okay.
us like there's no seams on any of the major planes of the face except
Yeah.
the back, which is probably, and like the top, which is probably going to have like a hat on it anyway.
So I was gonna say you'd maybe go up to like hairline or
Yeah,
something on a.
yeah. Like coming up to here is
Yeah.
fine. Like, but you totally don't have to. Both work
Okay.
really. But like, I mean, that there like is a human basically unwrapped. Like that's pretty much literally everything on a
Okay.
human body, right? We have the torso in the center. Oh, we didn't do the arms,
Yeah.
right? These arm islands here are highly distorted, but again, this one's an obvious seam.
Straight up the
Yeah,
armpit. Yeah.
yeah, something like that. now we've got a human that is basically unwrapped. Now from here, you would probably do stuff like actually square these islands out, you know, and
Okay, like manually.
yeah,
Okay.
or like there's a lot of plugins that kind of automate this. I won't go into it here
Okay.
because it's actually a bit particular and uses like pinning and stuff, and we still yet to talk about baking. But the idea is like you would kind of
Yeah.
square these out, and then I think it's relax or smooth. Where is it? Relax. Well, yeah, I typically don't even bother with half of this stuff. Like,
Okay.
one thing I'll commonly do is I'll pin these borders like this. I think it's P to pin it. And then now when I unwrap
Okay.
this, it's gonna
It's not going to
naturally,
start moving it out of the,
yeah.
yeah.
See how it's gonna try and relieve as much tension in the middle as possible, and then from here it's just sort of like, okay, well maybe.
What did you just do then? Relax or smooth?
Hmm?
And did you unwrap it after you pinned the
Yes,
corners?
yeah.
Did you
After I
unwrap
pinned
again
it, I
or?
unwrapped this island again by selecting just this island and unwrapping
Okay.
it, right? But
Okay.
there's plugins to like do this, and it's just way easier, way better. So more often than not, I'll just use plugins. A lot of the time, I just won't even care, depending on the character that I'm working on and the deadlines that I'm on. If the islands take up, you know, most of the UV space, it's all good. But we may as well talk about packing as well. So, you know, I talk about packing in the video, but the idea is like we want to take, if you can imagine, the largest possible island here would be this body island. So it is going
Yeah.
to inform the maximum scale of any other island in this unwrap, right? If I think like, well, I can't have this one island take up more than 1 UV, it's constrained within this 0 to 1 range, then that means that all of the other islands naturally must be smaller than this one, right? So
Okay.
if I think, okay, if this island is now going to be so large that it takes up the entire UV space, can any of these other islands like fit, right? And the answer is basically
Maybe you can.
no, except for like the boots up here, the soles of the boots. These can fit,
Yeah.
right? So this is sort of the algorithm that we're going to play, is like make the largest island possible be the constraining factor, and then we try and pack smaller stuff. And now that we can't pack anymore, well, we naturally now need to, and I'll do this by the cursor, we now need to shrink, whoops, get over here, where are we? Cursor, view, cursor, I'll chuck the cursor in the bottom left, whoops. We now need to scale everything down to such a point that a gap opens, maybe to about there, that potentially another
Yeah.
smaller island can take that place.
Okay.
Right? Maybe not quite there. Maybe a little bit more scaling is
And
needed.
are you just doing this until everything fits back on there
Yes.
and is
Yeah.
taking up the whole?
Yeah. So now you can sort of see how we're
Like,
able to start, like that one there now is a great fit for this overall shape. It like
yeah.
slots in, right? And so you just kind of, it's a bit computational. We're just sort of thinking like, okay, I'm basically just
Yeah.
shrinking until I can get back enough space, whoops, to put that in, right? And you just repeat. But the key insight here is that the largest island is like the limiting factor. So the basic thing is we want to sort the islands by size and then essentially try and pack them in as best we can. But
Okay.
long story short, we can automate that. Pack islands, right? This is a new Blender 4
Okay.
feature, I think. We say, okay, I want you to do the exact shape, concave. You can scale and rotate, but like if you want your rotations fixed, like maybe you've aligned your UV islands in a correct way, you can
Yeah.
unflag rotation and just let it go nuts. And then from here, I can
Okay.
pack, and it's just going to crunch some numbers and do the best like mathematical unwrap that it can. Now, this mathematical
Okay.
unwrap may be kind of shitty because maybe you might want to have the hands positioned a little bit better or like together kind of thing. So
Would you ever overlap, like say your hands were going to be exactly the same? Would you
yes,
ever like overlap them in the UV space so they used the
you absolutely would. You
like
would
the
do that a
same?
lot. Yes.
Okay.
So I would actually make the character more like this, unwrap that, pack that. Okay, and now we can symmetrize these selectively. And now
How
we're
did you do
done.
that? Magician! He's a wizard!
Yeah, I'll delete these for you. So we've given it the unwrap, we've packed it, right? Now at this point, we can symmetrize. Like if I put an object over here and I type symmetrize in the
Yeah.
F3 command, I just type SYM and then hit
Yeah.
enter.
I didn't know. I
We,
didn't know that
this
this
is like
little
the
feature
non-mirror
existed.
modifier method of doing this, right? Like the reason I'm doing it here is I want to selectively symmetrize, right? Now,
yeah.
before we like pay attention up here, see my gizmo up here? When you symmetrize, you move your eyes to the top right and you glance and you go right. So I want to go from negative X over to positive X. And then we run the symmetrize command and we look down here and we see direction. By default, it's going to be negative X to positive X. But sometimes when you're modeling, like you're going to be modeling in a different orientation for whatever reason. So my eyes always glance up here and I go, right, I want to go from this side to, okay, negative X to positive X. And then run the symmetrize command and then...
It's kind of the same as with the mirror modifier when you've got something not aligned properly and it overlaps it on the same side, or it does the X or the Y. Okay.
But because we're unwrapping, right, like... in this case, like I don't want to use the mirror modifier because I have my islands here. So all I want to do is grab the islands I care about. So like if I mouse over a UV island and tap L, it's going to link select out to the nearest seam. It's by default split by seam. It can be split by normal materials, a whole bunch of things, but by default it's delineated by seam. So I could go L click, 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 and grab everything here. Sorry, just tapping L, I'm not actually clicking. That'll grab everything, and then I can symmetrize just this selection, right?
Now, and that'll keep the UVs, like it'll copy the UVs, overlap.
Yep, literally enhances the UVs. But it hasn't actually like merged these. See how if I move these, like there's still a gap, so you would need to weld your verts at the end, right? But
so it symmetrizes, but it doesn't join. It doesn't join the new.
Yeah. If you wanted it to join, right, we would have to select like larger than that, like that, and then symmetrize this. But now we've just like kicked the can down the road.
Then you're just going to move the problem.
Yeah. And now I've made a bigger problem because I've symmetrized this face on top of this face, right? So yeah, keep that in mind. So like you can.
Could you just solve that by just? Could you just solve that by just in merge and merge by distance, because you'll technically have it overlapping.
That's all. Yeah, that's all I would do is I would grab that and that, symmetrize this, grab everything, merge by distance, done, remove all
merge by distance. Yep.
Now before, when I was selecting stuff, I was tapping L, right, to like grab that. But if, for instance, like you had fingernails here, and like maybe these fingernails had their own UV island for some reason. Like tapping L is, I'm just going to miss that, you know, like I'm not actually going to grab the islands there. So a lot of the time what I'll do is I'll look for like the largest non-interrupted set of islands connecting to where I want to go. I'll grab it. This is just an easy box select followed by Control+. Yeah. That guarantees that I get everything on that arm.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And I'll do both at once, right? So everything, but then there's a gap. Grab everything I can, and then there's a gap. Sorry, let me actually grab them together with box select. Control+. I've grabbed both. Symmetrize.
Okay.
Remove doubles. Done.
Okay.
Right? Now, if we ever run the unwrapping command again, those islands are going to split apart, and we're going to lose some effective textile density, so we leave them the way that is. Okay? Now, this gets... I'll start talking about some baking concepts, right? For baking, and let me know if we're running over time, by the way.
Yeah, you're all good.
Okay. When we do this symmetrical island thing, I have made sure that this island here on the right that is being symmetrized over to this arm, these are two totally separate, like they are split by distance. There is a gap between these, right? There is some other geometry that exists between these islands, okay? If I was instead to grab the torso, and I'll just make a copy, I'll move him over here, and I mirror down the center line, like this, and I symmetrize this, we now have an island out here, an island here, And then these are going to be the exact same over here. Island here and island here.
And
See how they're the
repeat.
same island? Right?
Yeah.
Most renderers on the planet are not equipped to deal with baked tangent normals that cross this line. Typically,
Okay.
they would need to have a seam here.
You need some kind of buffer.
Yes, but if we did that, we've just wasted the point of like overlapping the verts.
Doing it, yeah.
Right? So like, why bother? You know what I mean? Like, so on the torsos,
Yeah.
you will typically like have that be unique texture space. However,
yeah,
this is going to come in handy when you're doing your bakes in Toolbag. Typically, what we like baking tangents across the mirror seam like this is actually quite not complicated, but very peculiar, right? So much so that in like Epic Games official documentation from like 2012 or something, they just kind of concede defeat and say like, we just choose not to do it because it's such a pain in the ass to get right. Please, like maybe use a detail map across the symmetry line, right? You can get this flawless. It's just that it's so finicky, a lot of people don't bother, right? So one of the key things that you'll do is that when you're baking in Marmoset, you will actually grab one side here and you will offset that by one whole UV space. So the way that I did that there was I grabbed the symmetry that I didn't care about. Sorry, the symmetry of one side, like I guess you could say the subservient side, right? This is the side we're going to sort of texture. This is the other one. I grab that island. I hit G, followed by X, followed by 1. Enter. So I'm saying push this whole island over by 1 UV range, right? Now, when I...
Why?
Because our UV range is going to tile. So all of the pixels that are here will repeat exactly 1 unit here. So even though the islands are separate in space, they are still in the exact same relative to position in the UV range.
Place.
Right?
And would that like export okay? Would that like...
Yes. Most of
There's
the time.
no problem with having like islands outside of that like box?
No. And in some workflows it's actually required, right? So the key point is that this vert here is at 0.05 on X, and here it'll be exactly 1.05. And we can do this again, right? If I move this across by fucking 10, 10 UV islands over, it is still going to be in the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this changes if this texture on the GPU is set to clamp. So this is a little complicated, but the graphics card can sample textures in at least 2 ways, I guess, or like have them repeat in one of 2 ways. They can either repeat, where each texture will just be sampled again and again and again, like out here in this infinite space of UVs, or it will clamp and then stretch all the border pixels. Almost always your textures are going to be set to repeat. Almost always. And by default, in every engine, they're all set to repeat. Right? So this is typically not actually a problem. When would you use clamp? You would use clamp if you were doing something like this. See how this plane that I've just added is fully unwrapped to the whole island? And I don't... Like I come flush to the side of the unwrapped space here. I come right up here to this border. If I was doing like retro graphics and I wanted exactly these pixels here to be square and like hard on that side, I would need this to be set to nearest neighbor sampling with clamp. And that would like allow this side to not like wrap around to this side. Typically, if there's bilinear filtering, the pixels at this side are actually just these pixels here, but repeating again and again and again. So when they blur, they're going to blur across this border and wrap around here. So if our unwrap comes up flush like this, then that would be bad, right? But for this torso, there's a margin. There's almost always going to be a margin. So this isn't a problem, right?
Yeah.
So that is like one way, like basically if you're going to do a symmetry line down the middle, like of the chest of your character, right? And you're baking normals, this gets more complicated. You now need to... I'm going to move that back to there. You can now offset it by 1 and yeah, you're going to be mostly good. But going back to what we were talking about before, you also need... sorry, let me smooth shade this, because this is typically what the normals of our character will look like, right? It's usually not a blocky guy like this. They're usually smooth, and then we will bake our normals from our high poly to our low poly. In this case, we require a hard split here. we need this to
That's
be...
max sharp.
Yes, and then if I auto smooth with a very high amount of degrees... Whoops. You should be sharp. Why aren't you
And
sharp? Huh.
shade smooth. This always happens when we're on a session, like something.
See that there? This hard seam here will actually be required to get the two islands to bake their tangents correctly. And the mesh needs to be completely and utterly symmetric, right? If this was to triangulate like this is not symmetric, right? The normals here are going to behave slightly differently on both sides. For us to mirror from one side to the other and bake, the geometry needs to be exactly perfectly symmetric in all ways.
So if you've got an unsymmetrical character, slightly, slight bit of tilt on his kind of sculpt, you just wouldn't do the mirror function. You would like treat it as a whole.
So that asymmetry needs to be very intelligently designed. It has to be placed very particularly, right? So on the front of the body of this character, if you have been given the technical requirement that this has to be mirrored, or you're making the judgment call that you're going to mirror it so that you can buy back, you can double your textile density by mirroring it, at that point, you're forcing your own hand in terms of asymmetry. You are not allowed to use asymmetry to do this, right? If you're going to introduce asymmetry, it has to be at the very end after we've done the bake. Remember how last time we talked, I said, once we get into baking, we do not, mess with the surface? Well, this would be like an exception to that, right? Like, we would do all the baking, we would finish the character, and then reintroduce a little bit of asymmetry. Right? Something like that. Okay, but not before and not during, right? Typically, the asymmetries are going to be on things like the face. But like a lot of the time, like in the modern era, we kind of have the texture, space, and resources to just like not have to bother about.
I was going to say it would be acceptable if you had like a heavily asymmetrical character, like for example, doing David's head. That was completely like there was no way that was ever going to be symmetrical. That would be
which is one of the reasons why I chose that example. Do that and that's another reason why I had Nefertiti as the second example, because she could be symmetric. You know what I mean? And I just wanted to pose that hypothetical to like the students, I guess you could say. Yes, but like, asymmetric characters and asymmetric things are awesome. Like, they look cool. There's extra detail there that players can appreciate. It takes longer and uses more resources, but it is pretty cool. So it's, again, judgment call. Like, what type of design are you making? If you go back to like the pre-2010 era, pretty much all the characters were like symmetric down the middle, even with their face. Like, their faces were fully symmetric because they could claw back a shitload of texture resolution. We still care about these requirements. Not only do they save us like texture space, they also save us time, but it's less of a stringent requirement in 2025 with like the monster supercomputer graphics cards that we have running around. But still, like, if you were going to make like a cozy farming game on the Switch or something, you would 100% do things this way. Like, you would symmetry everything and blah blah blah, right? So
and you could technically say it was just your face or your head that was non-symmetrical. You could still symmetrize the arms and the legs, but then just do the head as a separate like entity,
which is sort of how we started here, right? Like, I grabbed the feet and made that symmetric, right? And then, we've clawed back. We've probably effectively gotten like an extra 30% out of this texture by reusing these elements, right? And like the boots and the shoulder pads, they would all be reused, like,
say you wanted to do like everything was symmetrical, but in the texturing you were going to do like, say your character had different tattoos on each arm, then you would still keep them separate. You wouldn't symmetrize UVs. They would have to be kept separate because that dictates the space that you're painting in for your texturing.
There is another way, but yes, like 100% that is the requirement, right? You have the UVs are there to map the texture to the 3D model, to dictate
space that you're painting in or you're coloring.
If UVs are symmetric, that's another way of saying my texture is symmetric. We are designing that on purpose. But something that you could do is you could basically duplicate like the faces of the arm, right? And then start manipulating these, right? Delete that, clear that up.
Oh, so you had some of them symmetrical and some of them in different places. So where the tattoos were would be like off to the side where the tattoo was on the texture, but the rest of the arm would match.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, like, so we start getting very technical here, right? So in this example, I could make it effectively a decal, like I've placed like a tattoo here, and I can move it over here and do a little bit of texturing on the tattoo. But
just have the tattoo there.
It's going to need to be...
It wouldn't match then.
Well, it's going to not match in a lot of ways, right? The normals aren't going to match, first of all. There are ways to overcome this, but in general, the normals won't match. The topology won't match, which means that our rigging now becomes a nightmare. Like, our rigging and skinning to actually get this to deform is going to become a nightmare, because as the hand moves, this is going to slide around on the surface. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to start interpenetrating, that kind of thing. Not only that, if I want this tattoo to be transparent, like I've drawn like a tattoo in ink up here as like a decal... This now makes our object more costly to render. It needs two materials.
Is that
right? One
is that where, like, on an old game, you would see like the tattoo flickering on like the...
Could be, yeah. Like there's a billion reasons, but yes, like there's so many more stringent technical requirements now that we like. It's not impossible, but you can't just like luck your way into pulling this off. You actually have to plan for it, right?
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, what we've just described here is clothing. You know.
Out of interest, could you, if you were going to do this, and say you just had a tattoo on one arm and that's why you were doing this, could you actually mirror the geometry of cutting around the tattoo, but only move the UV island on one arm, and on the other arm you would leave the UV island in where it would be? Does that make any sense?
Well, so look at it like this. If I start cutting into this, right? I've very
say you did this on like a mirrored...
Oh, I see what you mean.
So you've done this on like a mirrored, so it's happening on the other arm as well.
Yeah, so...
so you could symmetrize it, but you just move the one arm's like little cutout. So then rather than it being kind of projected onto the face, it's part of the mesh.
Yeah, so...
On the other arm, it just hasn't been moved to the tattoo space. Okay. Just like the UV island. Does that make any sense?
Great question. It makes perfect sense. There's like 3 edge cases here that we need to consider, right? So when I am... And I'll talk about the non-symmetric version, and then I'll talk about the symmetric version. When I try and cut this in here, I am changing the normals of the mesh, right? We do, once we've baked our normal map, we basically do not want to change the normals, because now it's not going to render correctly, right?
So is this like if you found out that you had to add a tattoo after you'd done all the baking, rather than knowing, if you knew beforehand, would that give you...
Yeah, like that would never happen. If that happens, that means like the CEO is going on a power trip, you know what I mean? Like the art team is looking for new jobs because they're like, wow, pipeline sucks, what's going on? You know? Yeah, that's crazy. Like it does happen, but this is why typically what you would do is like in all the workflows that I've shown people, remember how I said like we just do a quick unwrap and then a quick bake and then we just test it? We want to be like testing and iterating before committing so that we know we're not going to have to add that goddamn tattoo back in, right? But anyway, I digress. So if we start editing one side of it, right, with the knife tool, we are manipulating the normals. So that's a no-go, right? So your first posed question is actually a really good way of dealing with this. We instead pre-plan the tattoo in geometry on the other hand, right? And then now that we've got the normals here, when we symmetrize this, our normals are exactly the same on the other side. We're still using the exact same texture space. We can now grab these and position this off to the side and add a tattoo
off to
here.
The tattoo and leave the other one.
But
would that work?
That'll be perfectly fine. But to do that, we have now put a series of seams right here, right? Now, this means that, and like our baking as well, like if we have a really high poly human arm here, and the high poly details on the arms are the same, then it's going to bake like skin pores and arm detail to this section as well as the overall arm in general. This should work without issue. It should line up, right? And like, it's gonna be a touch weird, but like you can do it. This is much more attractive when we're dealing with stylized art, like anime arms or like cartoon characters where this whole arm is just the same goddamn shade of orange, you know? At that point, we can totally go crazy and start pulling like random like faces out. Like you could grab that and move that over here. But again,
because you're just going to have like a singular kind of color.
Yeah, which means that painting over the seams is now trivially easy because it's just the same color on both sides.
Yes.
You know? So that is one way of doing it, right? Like, there are ways to bring back the asymmetry, and again, like, there's nothing wrong. It's just that, like, you know, if this character ever needs to get reworked, and you hand this mesh off to someone, they might be a problem. Yeah, they might be like, what the hell have you done here? So, like, ideally, like, you do these edits knowing that the character's not going to change, right? Like, if you're still at the point where your team doesn't know whether or not the design of the character's going to change, one, figure that out.
And you shouldn't be maybe building it, like,
But so like a lot of the time, like what we used to do at a previous place I worked at was we would do work in like stages, which was really awesome. So we would do like a first pass of the block in, and then we would test that in game, you know? And then we would do a first pass of like the texture and then test that in game, and like so on and so forth. And it was this like iterative approach, which meant we never like fucked up, you know, like it was always like everything worked first go because there were actually 4 goes, you know, like each time. It was really, really awesome. So really good quality control.
And that's not the norm, I guess.
Like I think it is in general the norm. Different studios go about it in different ways, but in general, like, have you ever heard of the phrase perfect waterfall in like software development?
Nope.
Well, the idea of perfect waterfall is like you do the high poly, and then you do the low poly, and then you do the bake, and then you do the rig, right? And like you never backtrack. You just do A, then B, then C, then D, then E.
Okay.
Right?
Always moving forward or down in the analogy of the waterfall. It's a shit
way of doing any work in software development. It never works. People keep trying to do it. They've been trying to do it for 20 years. It sucks, right? It's the same in CG art. It's better to just block in and test than it is to try and perfect waterfall it. But you also, like, the downside of approaching it that way is you need confidence, because if you're indecisive, then you're like, oh, maybe I don't know if I should change this. Like, you never commit to finishing.
I was going to say, I think I am a perfect waterfall kind of worker. I think that's why I've been asking you so many.
Exactly, right? Because the whole perfect waterfall thing is an anxiety mitigating mechanism, right? By having the perfect plan, we don't have to worry about it changing, because the plan will never change. But, like, the plan always changes, right? So as you get more and more mastery, like, over this subject domain, it's going to become much easier for you to work in more, like, non-standard ways, right? Like, that panda that I made...
And non-linear.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That panda that I made was made in a totally non-standard workflow that, like, nobody on the planet would ever actually really use. But I did it because it had, like, certain pros and cons that I wanted, like, in that case. And so when...
But you have to understand.
Yeah, you have to, like, this is why, like, knowing the fundamentals is so important, because then you can make those calls, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people were like, hey, you should do a tutorial on how you made that panda. And I was like, if I do that, I'm going to cripple any newbie watching this video. They're going to develop the worst habits. It's going to be bad. The only reason I did it was because I knew the downsides, you know? Yeah, that's a bit more like of a philosophical ramble, but yeah, like, does that answer, like, pretty much all of your, like, unwrapping questions that you have at the moment? Like, again, you're just going to have to do it to learn, but, like, these are really the fundamentals, right? Yeah.
So on the mushroom, the only thing that still isn't, like, have you got the mushroom open in this? Is he, like, on this file?
He is, yes.
So, for example, if you hit into edit mode with him, I would, if I was just quickly going to do this, I would mark...
Think about it like cubes, right? Like in the
his arms. Yeah, his arms and his legs.
And again, on our cube, we have, like, there's a few places we could do this. We could try and do it deep in the armpit, so we're obscuring some of the seam, or we could sort of treat it like the cube where we have those natural.
I would have gone for your first choice. I would have gone for that under the armpit. Yeah. So I'd do his arms and legs.
How would you do the arm though?
And then,
because this here,
I would come straight into the center and. See, I would go straight down the middle and up the top.
Like this?
Like that, yeah.
That would be fine. However, like, we've now got a seam on the top side. So maybe it might be worth it to just see if we can get away with, like, a seam out here.
Seam the bottom.
Yeah, so we'll see if that gives us a lot of distortion, like, on the hand. which it really does.
Yeah.
Right?
Could
So
you relax? Could you relax that though, like manually? If you
not really.
could,
Like,
you
you
just
could, but
you
you're just
wouldn't
going to be
like just
trading
pick the relax
tension in this area for tension in
in the
another
other
area.
places.
Yeah.
Okay. So
So,
maybe I'd cut the hand off then. If this was
yeah,
kind of going on, would cutting the
could,
hand off and then running up
yeah, yeah, like that. That
the
could work.
base.
Yep.
Yeah.
Something like this,
Yeah.
you know. Whoops.
Yeah.
Yeah, the key
No.
point is, so now we've opened the arm up quite a lot. We do have some seams on the hand, but we're mitigating like a very long, large, prominent seam here on the
Yeah.
top. And like this
Yeah.
mushroom guy is pretty stylized, right? And there's not really much detail on the
Yeah.
hand, so the seams are going to be very forgiving. I just wanted to kind of highlight, like, we probably want to avoid
Yeah.
really big seams up here if we have to, you know.
Okay.
And then we've got like the leg,
So
right?
yeah,
Basically.
that's exactly what I would have gone.
Yep, something like that.
And then the leg, maybe see what happens if you just go down the back, because the distortion on the base of the foot wouldn't be too much of a problem.
So we could do down the back, but again, for this character, look, for this is
Inside.
very forgiving character, right? But like, because maybe third person it looks like this, adventure game it looks like this. I almost always will put the seam on the inner thigh, always.
Go down the inner seam.
It's just
okay.
Like, there's no good place to put it, but this is kind of like the least bad place.
That's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Best of a bad bunch.
And then, you know, find a way to open up the leg. The foot, sorry. You can leave it hinged if you want. Again, like, this character is so simple that these seams are not going to be a huge problem, right? If this was like leather straps and shoes, this would be a different story, right?
So then at the top, dealing with the track, so I'd still need to split the body.
Yes.
Up the back, but dealing with the hat, let's call it, for now. If I would mark I'm planning to have 3 materials on this body. I'm planning to have his body, the gills, and like the top.
You probably shouldn't do that.
Okay, and why?
So, as a game character, in terms of the different material types, right? When we say material, we think surface definition. We think maybe there's a shiny bit, maybe there's a slick, gross, like mucusy bit.
Yeah.
Right? For video game characters, that is not what materials are, right? That's not what material means. A material is an identifier with which we assign textures. That is it. That is all a material is. The actual different material surface characteristics of our model, we will texture into the textures themselves, right? So you do not need several materials to describe the gill area, and then the body area, and then the top red area.
But what if I wanted those, like, I wanted the top to be shiny, I wanted the gills to be kind of soft looking, and then in Mana Set, you assign them, like, as far as I could tell from when I was messing around with David, you create like a new texture project, and then you link the separate materials to it. So when you're dictating between those 2 texture projects, like the shininess of one or the softness of one, you would need that material distinction to, like,
you would need
split them
on the high poly, right? So these rocks, I could give a material and say, like, this is a shiny obsidian.
On the high poly?
Yes, on the high poly. So,
I thought at the end you weren't going to really, like... So is that because it will bake that shininess in the normals rather than...
It'll not... Right? So, remember how we asked about the albedo map and I said it basically means color?
Yeah.
We have a metalness map and a roughness map as well.
Yeah.
Now, the metalness map determines how metallic the surface is. So you can see on this diving bell, we have a rubber hose, which is black in the metal-like section.
It's going to be kind of softer, Yeah.
It's white in all of the metallic areas except for where the patina is, right? The patina is not metallic. It's not conductive. It doesn't conduct electricity, so it's not metallic, right? We then have a roughness map, right? We have... The rubber hose is quite rough. Well, not super, super rough, but it's pretty rough, right? Like, it's close-ish to white, but not pure white. The metallic areas...
The shiny bits are going to be black.
Yes, exactly. The
black's almost like emitting it from the...
yes. It's don't
like
be
the
rough, you know?
category.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The patina is a type of rust, right? So it's pretty rough surface. Okay. When we combine these three maps together, color, metalness, and
yeah.
roughness, we have everything required to actually describe a surface very complexly. Like, see how now we get these really nice like highlights that blow out here. The rope doesn't
Yeah.
look like it's made of metal. The rubber is actually kind of rough, but with a gentle
How,
sheen on it.
but practically, how would they have achieved all of that on one material when, as far as I could see,
Yeah. So
you couldn't
we
specify on one material like, oh, I want like this part to be shiny, but this part
yeah, well
like, or
because
this
these
part
are
to be high
textures.
metalness and this part not.
Like these are a full texture set, right? So if I go like PBR
Yeah,
texture set, the material definition is in the
but
individual pixels that make up the textures themselves. It's not at the material level,
oh,
right? We throw out all of the material
mm.
level because we don't get that information like from Blender into the game engine. We need to encode that data somewhere else, and we put that into the
But that's
textures.
what I thought.
Mm.
That's what I thought I was doing with like having those three separate materials like on the same mesh was giving it those three separate like.
On the high poly, we have different materials as a convenience measure, right? So let me I'll show you. So
Because I was planning to not put any materials on the high poly. I was just adding materials to the low poly.
no, other way around. So
Okay.
yeah, this is going to be
But
one of
then I
those
don't.
things that
The
doesn't
only
make sense
thing
until it suddenly does.
I was going to say, when I go into Marmoset, let me just open up again
Yeah.
David, because that's the one I was messing around with in Marmoset. So so in Marmoset for the texturing,
Mm-hmm.
let me just open the David Marmoset. In Marmoset for the texturing, so when I exported David,
Yep.
the high polys have got no materials, the low polys have got materials on them.
Mm.
In Marmoset, when you go into the texture part of it, where was it? Let me just find where I am. So you go into the texture option, and then you add a new texture project.
Yes.
And that's allowing you to texture your low polys, not your high polys, because obviously you're going to be exporting
Yeah, we're not going to
low
texture
poly
the high poly.
of all your base details and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you need that. Like, I don't know whether it's different in Substance Painter, and I know you haven't done much texturing in Marmoset. I can imagine that they're not different. Maybe I'm just approaching it different, but
Yeah.
from everything that I could see, you like if I wanted David's nose to be like slime, for example, and the rest of him to be like metal.
Yes.
The only way that I could have seen to do that in Marmoset would have been to have had a different material on his nose, created a new um, texture project,
Mm-hmm.
and assigned his nose material to that new texture project, which would allow me to like paint.
Yeah.
No, I
So
guess
we won't have to do that, right? And yeah, I haven't done too much texturing
okay.
in Toolbag, but I can guarantee you it will be almost identical, like
I
in,
was going
in
to say, I think
function.
maybe I'm
Yep.
approaching it from a really strange
Yeah.
direction.
So this whole discussion comes under the field of physically based rendering, PBR texturing, right? The idea
Okay.
is that if we have a really, really good shader, a really good program that's quite general, and only
Mm-hmm.
requires a couple of inputs. It needs albedo, it needs roughness, and it needs metalness. We can then
Mm-hmm.
describe most organic surfaces, most natural surfaces that exist in the world around us. Not all of them, but like maybe
Yeah.
85% of them. So if I wanted to texture the room that I'm sitting in, right, my computer, my little action figures or
Yeah.
whatever I've got, like my blinds, and my plaster on my walls, I only need those three attributes to describe all of those surfaces. Even like copper piping, if there
Mm-hmm.
was any exposed piping. Now, our
Yeah.
mushroom character is very similar, right? In that we only need color and we need shininess, and you can actually imagine we totally throw out metallic. There's nothing on this object that's metallic. Nothing on this object conducts electricity. So really we're only playing with like albedo and roughness. That's all we need to describe the gills, the top, and the rocks, right? Like that's enough to differentiate all three together. And so on the high poly, what you could do is, and you can kind of see here, I've got my little mushroom guy. I would say, right, on the top mushroom area, I want to make that sort of red and maybe not really rough. Maybe it's quite shiny. Or maybe it is a little rough, right? The rocks, I'm going to make those black and quite shiny, right? And then the body, I'm going to make the body of the high poly pink, pretty rough. And then the gills, I want to make maybe orange, something like this, right? We can bake all of this information to a texture set, and we can begin texturing from here. We've like established the rough like material properties, and this will just come in as 3 textures. The corresponding low poly will only have one material. It will be named like M underscore mushroom character or M underscore character underscore pirate, right? The reason that we do that is that materials actually have a relatively significant performance cost, right? Having a different mesh, like having this mushroom head be one mesh and then this body be another mesh like this where they're separate objects is a relatively inconsequential performance cost between these two. Because as far as the graphics concerned, this is a couch and this is a lamp post. They're completely different, right? Even though we see them as the 2 sides of the same guy, the graphics card thinks they're totally separate. So when we're actually making our dude, we want like one object, one material on the low poly, but the high can have
on the low poly. Be as many. So I think the step that I was missing was that you can export these texture packs. I think that was like something that I've never heard of, wasn't aware of, and that would make sense as to then like take in the elements of that you've set. So that is kind of a way to at least export like some material information
we
out
encode it into texture space. That's what this whole process is.
And how would one go about doing such a thing?
So I need to get off my ass and upload the rest of the videos for the mushroom guy. So the next texturing project we're going to do is something like hard surface screwdriver, something like this, right? I'm going to get everyone to do a prop that has different material surface types, something simple, right? Like see how this object here has like a very shiny metallic central area, and then there's an anodized metal tip, and then rubber, and then plastic, right? This will, and it's a screwdriver. I know it's not entertaining, but it will teach people, right? So this will be one of the props immediately after the mushroom guy, and this is going to teach us like
what I'm doing now is trying to figure out all of this, but for the mushroom guy. So I will figure it out. It's okay.
Yeah, but basically, the long and the short of it is your finished mushroom character is only going to have one material and one texture set, and you therefore retroact. Like I'm your art director, and I'm telling you, nah, you only get one material set, one texture set. So now you have to then figure out how to put the materials into that. Obviously, I'm going to help you and tell you, but that's kind of the point. And we do this for performance, right? Probably the major reason is performance.
But that one final. Oh, sorry, my dog's just choking on something. Is she alright?
Oh no,
okay. She does it. Yeah, because I don't know why she does it. She every now and again she just gets like I think it's just like a Frenchy thing.
Yeah, fair enough.
She hasn't got as flat a face as most Frenchies, which is because she's a quarter staffy, so she's got like a little bit of a nose, but I think it still gets her sometimes.
I used to have a staffy a long time ago. Yeah.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Well, they're the best dogs.
Yeah, I love them. So, yeah.
So your final export from
Marmoset Toolbag or Substance Painter
is going to be your low poly mesh with the one material. That's where you're saving.
Yeah, and it's really, really, actually, what's going to come out of this is 3 textures. or a couple textures.
I was going to say, so if you import like this bit of information from Blender, so let me just write down because I didn't actually jot down. It's a texture packs that I'm looking at.
Yep.
Exporting from Blender. Okay.
That's what we're gonna send. Like, and we're gonna send the
to
mesh.
Marmoset or Substance Painter.
Well, the mesh. So once we're done texturing and we're all good, we now go to the engine, right? We're gonna take the mesh from Blender to the game engine, and the textures from Painter or Toolbag to the game engine. We're going to join them together in material, and then at that point you are done. You have made a full game character start to finish, right? So that's where we're going with this.
So the workflow would be to add these if you wanted like a bit, if you only had one material and you wanted a bit of like texture difference between them, like you've done here where the body's a bit shinier, you would do that with roughness and maybe add the base colors if you wanted to. You would do that with roughness and base color in Blender. You would export that as a texture pack.
So, not quite, right?
With
so, our high poly in Blender, I give a couple materials, right? Now, when you send this into Marmoset Toolbag, Marmoset is smart enough to bake this base data, right? Roughness, metalness, like these sorts of things. It will bake this, and then on top of that,
like matching information.
Yeah, it'll bake it into the textures, right? You can then go and texture and touch stuff up. Now, in general, you actually won't really do this because it introduces more parts, like more moving parts, more chances to make mistakes, and it's quite easy to just do in Painter anyway, right? So, I mean, I may as well just show you it, actually.
Basically what I'm trying to do is figure out how to get like different surface textures on that one
so you will just
mesh with the one material.
Yeah, like this is what texturing is. Like you will use brushes with different attributes to create that texture, right? So I'll just do it in Substance Painter.
Okay, you know what? That makes sense because you can, within the same texture project in Marmoset, you can make the different. That's how I added all the layers of like mold on the stone David.
Exactly.
You can add layers within. Okay, so there's where the difference is between the materials. So you're adding layers in Marmoset and then painting with those like materials in air quote, and that's where it's attributing like the different roughnesses and whatnot.
That's where your one material comes from.
That makes sense. That's just I think just clicked in my head. I don't know why it took me so long to get here, but
it's okay. We're here. Like it takes a little bit, but the key point here, right, is that when I and check in Painter, when I bake my mesh maps, I only get normal world space, normal ID, curvature. See all these? This is all I get, right? I don't get... Oh, shoot. What file was I in? I actually don't get metallic and roughness. I don't get those, right? Because, again, like, if you think back to the material chapter on the wiki, we don't control how other programs treat Blender's data. We know that they take meshes, because everyone takes meshes. But in terms of our surface detailing and our surface attributes from our materials, we don't get that. Toolbag, however, is awesome. Toolbag reads everything, right? So if I was going to do this, like if I was going to do that like surface texture changing in Marmoset using layers in the texture project rather than... Would it be okay for my high polys to not have any materials on them when I was just baking like the normals? Yes. So what my point ultimately is that, and this is kind of why I said we just don't fucking bother with this, because it's trivially easy to set up and fix in the thing. But this becomes really useful as a utility, as a quality of life thing, right? So if I just clear roughness and metallic from everything, get rid of roughness, get rid of metallic, get rid of roughness, get rid of metallic. I don't care about that data. I'm not going to get it anyway. But I will give them color, right? Base color, color.
Yeah.
And I won't give them color that makes sense. I will give them color which is very high in contrast and very different from each other. Okay?
Yeah.
So, and I'll just go down here and we'll pick, I mean, pink's pretty good for the body, so on and so forth, right? I'm going to export all of these, or you're just going to pretend like I've exported it, because here's one I prepared earlier, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, when I bake stuff, I want to bake the ID of the pixels
Yeah.
of the high poly into a texture map, right? And so all I need to
What
go,
would be the equivalent of that ID on Marmoset?
I think
Because I know on Marmoset
it'll
you
be
get.
like albedo. I think they just call it color, but you know,
I'll bet. Okay.
yeah. Let me ID map, ID texture. Where is it? What is it called? Oh, I don't know why I'm struggling so much to get this bad boy. Where are you? Color. Sorry, I'm having like a
I'm trying not to look
massive.
at too much of this
Yep,
because I
having
think
a
I
huge
get.
brain fart. There we go. Okay,
Um,
see this here?
you got it. Yeah,
These
that was
are
the
the
colours. Got
yeah.
you.
Now this is just the texture, right? See how these are just several textures? All it is baking the
Yeah.
color of the high poly down to texture space, not to render it, not to draw it, but so that we
Yeah.
can use this as a helping piece of data to select different areas of different material types. Okay, so if I had a bright, you know, maybe not bright, like if I had
So
a,
it acts as like your masks, basically.
it's exactly, that's all it is. It just gives us a series of masks
So
that
it
make it really
masks
easy to
because
work with
that
stuff.
was going to be my other question. Is
Yeah,
like if I've only got one material and I want to paint like a hard edge around the rocks, how on
yes.
earth
Exactly. Well, you could
do you
paint
go
it
about that?
manually. Like, you could totally paint it like this, but this would
Yeah.
suck, right? Like, this would take forever and be shitty,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. You'd have
So
to be so careful and like yeah.
instead, we add a in Substance Painter, and there will be something equivalent in Toolbag. I just can't
Okay.
tell you what it is,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I'm just jotting stuff
Yeah,
down for me to research further.
yep.
So masking,
There will be a
basically, I think
method
if
of
I start,
masking, yes. And in
yeah, masking in,
yeah,
like, yeah.
in Substance Painter,
Are
there's
you
add color selection. Do you see this here?
okay? Yeah, I
Right?
see.
If I select that, I can then hit this little color picker, and then bang, it colors my mesh
Uh,
back to these fancy colors, and I can pick the blue one. So I'm not trying to say the rocks
and
are
then just paint on
blue.
the blue one.
Yeah, I'm just saying like the
Yeah,
rocks
but it
are a
gives you that
bright color that's
distinction.
very high in contrast between different
Awesome.
colors, and
Okay.
now I can mask
Yeah.
my rock detail, and from here
So
I can give it different roughness characteristics, I can give it different color
yeah,
characteristics, so on and so forth, right?
awesome.
And
So your
this is where
high
your
poly
materials come
textures
from.
are your masks.
Yes.
Your high poly textures are your masks for
Yes.
your texturing process. That's
Pretty
awesome to
much. And
know.
but it's just
Okay.
material ID. Just think of it like that. It's just
Yeah,
convenience. It's not actually surface detail. It's not surface definition. We do get those in
yeah,
Toolbag
yeah.
because it's awesome, but like meh, you don't really
You
use it.
get, yeah, yeah.
You're just gonna paint that detail anyway, you know?
I was going to say,
Yeah.
what if I didn't want that, like roughness and metallic and everything else
Just
to
unbake
come
it.
over from?
Just
I just
untick
wanted
the
you just leave
boxes, you
it
know?
as zero.
Yeah, you just
Okay,
unbake it.
okay,
You'll only bake like the ID and the normals and the AO, right? Like just untick the stuff you don't want, you
yeah,
know?
okay, okay.
But yeah, that's basically
That
it. The
makes
long and the short
sense.
of it is we don't actually like get the material information. We have to make the material information. We then save that
Yeah,
into albedo, roughness, and metallic, right? There's more data you can save when you start doing like NPR stuff, like non-physically rendered stuff, and you start getting real art directy. But in general, like this is
yeah.
how you do
That
everything.
will do. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
If this was like obviously the aim of the mushroom guy is going to be exporting to go back into Blender to create like a scene with him. Um,
I would probably more lean
then
like taking them into Unity or Unreal, but yeah, you could take them back into Blender if you want. But
for
like,
this
yeah,
use case, just because I want to
yeah,
like
you can do
make
that.
like a cool little scene with him, and so with that, is that going to be relatively easy just
Yeah,
to export all of the work that you've done in Marmoset? Would you
yeah.
just export
You export the
like
texture set so
as
that you have your albedo, your material, and your roughness. That's it. You're just getting
okay,
textures like
and
out
then
of this. Oh,
you
you'll
add that
love it
back in
in
Blender?
Blender. Yep. You would make a
Okay,
material that
okay,
uses those textures. Which, if I go over to Mushroom Guy and I go to the
yeah.
later mushroom images, mushroom vids, and hopefully I haven't destroyed my work so I can find it again. Uh-oh. Oh, that's right.
That's why you save iterations.
Yeah, I made a new because I got like a touch of imposter syndrome, so I went and made like a new file called test run where I actually just finished the object. Right? So this here has a material which basically says In fact, I only end
Got the
up
image.
using the normals and my base color. I'd actually toss out the roughness and metallic data because this is a cute stylized guy. He doesn't need that information,
Yeah.
you know? So I literally just
Can you
have, like...
screenshot?
Hmm?
Just screenshot that and send it to me, the
Yeah.
material stuff, if you don't
Well,
mind.
mine is a bit peculiar because I actually use some emission to crank it, but literally, like, your guy is basically going to look kind of like this. Like, you're just going to use the base color into base color. I have full
You're going to use
roughness,
the
no
image.
metallic, and you use normals with... Yeah, I'll
Let
send
me take
you
a
a photo.
screenshot.
Yeah.
Oh shit! I think I've just grabbed onto
Yeah.
this one.
But the key thing, right?
Yeah.
If we're making art for a game, we can't do much like in these material editors because it's kind of cheating.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't actually really get full parity with these editors in the engine. So the things that the things that I do in here, I purposefully choose knowing that I have the same features available to me in Unreal and Unity. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, otherwise, you're just kind of like, you're trying to lie to people and show them, like, my art's actually much better than it really is. And the hiring managers are going to be, like, they're just not going to hire you.
I guess,
right?
For a portfolio, what you could do is show, like, your game-ready model and then show, like, your cinematic model. I guess, if you wanted to show that you can build for a game, but you can also build for, like, visual, like...
Well, you're not...
You know,
you're not showing them that, right? If you show a game res model that looks like shit, and then you show a really nice Blender render that looks awesome.
No, I don't mean it looks like shit. I mean like how you would do it for those two different use cases. Say you had someone come to you as a freelance project, and they were like, "I need you to make this character for my game, and it needs to look great in the game, and it needs to have all of these limitations that a game model asset needs to have. But I also want you to do the cover of like my my game as well. Like I want you to do the artwork for it, and for that I don't want it to be the exact like I want it to be the character from the game, but visualized in a way that's very cinematic and like a much more high resolution and high definition. So if you were essentially then kind of doing two versions of the same model for like two different use cases, because that's kind of what I'm picturing this as. Like I would like to.
Yeah. Okay, so like obviously you can do that, right? There's nothing stopping you doing that, but you never want to give the person looking at your portfolio the impression that you're trying to hide something. So what I would do if I were you is I would make your mushroom guy, and then I would do a real-time render, not a ray-traced render, not a cycle render. I'd do a real-time render in Marmoset. I would put that render front and center and use like all the little tricks that Marmoset will give you, because Marmoset is mostly aligned, not fully, but mostly aligned with a game engine. So any visuals you can pull off in Marmoset, you can probably pull off in Unreal, right? So
recreate in Unreal.
Like we're stretching the truth. We're not lying, right? We're stretching the truth a little bit. The absolute best thing for your portfolio would be showing this in Unreal or Unity. Done. At that point, it is a video game. You know what I mean? But we'll stretch the truth a little bit in Marmoset. And then you can also do what's called a beauty render.
At the end, do it. Yes. Yeah. So I think that's what I'm after. Like,
totally have both, but this we're getting into territory where it's like your real-time render better be good, you know? Otherwise, the hiring manager, it's going to have the opposite effect that you think it's going to have. They're going to look at your portfolio and see a game engine character mostly made, but with no beauty shot presenting the real-time render, and then they instead see a ray-traced render in Blender. They're just going to go, oh, so this person can't present in real time.
Yeah,
I'm not going to hire
as long as you are front and center. And I guess this also depends, and it's why people have different portfolios for applying for different kinds of roles, I guess, like they'll say, like, if you go in for, if you were literally applying someone that only does like games and game assets, then I guess maybe you would remove all of that other stuff from the portfolio before you sent it, or you would have like a separate portfolio.
Yeah, like in ArtStation, you could prep different groups, and so maybe you would give like one group of work to someone, give them a URL that only points to one curated like folder.
Only points to one group. That's what I'm thinking.
This is also true in like a film context, right? Like everything we're doing here is relative to real-time work. If you then went and applied to a film studio, they would be like, oh,
using this, they'd be like, what is this? Like, where are the beauty shots?
Yeah, show us the renders. Where's your lighting? Where's your comp?
Yes.
You know, like
I think that's what I'm getting at, because I'm not like set on exactly what it is that like I'm going to be doing in the future. Not that I want to do, because I want to do everything, but if I'm not set on what I'm going to be doing, like I'm trying to still think of it from like different
Yeah.
directions, I guess.
Well, basically, yeah. Like that, I guess I just want to really highlight that point. A lot of people do this where they will put content on their portfolio that looks good, but it actually has the opposite effect of like getting them hired.
Obfuscates their actual
Yeah,
skills
yeah.
because it
Whereas,
looks like they're trying to hide the lack of
exactly.
ability in making the actual asset that this company is going to need you to make
Yeah,
rather
because
than
they're not hiring you to just
so
model;
maybe
they're
an
hiring you to make a
ancillary,
product. Sorry, go on.
yeah, maybe like an ancillary beauty shot, like right at the end you would maybe add an
Yeah,
extra beauty shot right at the very end that just shows in a scene, kind of like, I guess these are some
yeah.
of these models are
So
absolutely
that's
beautiful.
that's why I love this portfolio so much, right? This is Natalie
Yeah.
P. I will butcher her last name if I try and pronounce it. She's a senior character artist.
Gutierrez.
Yeah, Yellow
Gutierrez.
Brick Games, right? This portfolio is one of the most incredible examples of character art that I have seen, right? So
Yeah.
if we go into this render here, like this render here, this grandpa and doggy is a high poly sculpt, okay? So that shows off that they
Yeah.
have the ability to high poly sculpt. That would typically be a slight like faux pas in terms of portfolio. But it's surrounded by perfect real-time examples. So it actually reinforces the
Okay.
point. I know how to do amazing real-time
She can
renders
sculpt
and I
so
can
well.
sculpt, right?
Yeah.
Right? They're not I'm not hiding anything here, right? So then
So
we
if
go
you go into
into
that grandpa and doggy, does grandpa and doggy just have
it'll
that
just be the sculpt,
high
right? Like almost oh no, this is low. Yeah, boom. So,
I
I
was
mean,
going to
I
say
guess
that,
I'm
yeah.
eating my words anyway, right? This is a beauty render, but it's using all of the hallmark features, you could say, of real-time rendering. Here's PBR texturing, there's some light smoke effects that we've done here, and
Yeah.
sort of relatively standard lighting that we have access to in a real-time engine, right? We have, like, you know, key light,
Yeah.
floor light, all these sorts of things, right? So
this is, she's kind of done what I'm
yeah,
talking about doing, of
but she's
showing
sticking to
a
using
bit of
technologies
variety.
that we have access to in the engine,
Yeah.
right? Whereas a lot of
In the
people will
engine.
try and do
Okay.
a really good like ray trace render with like all the stops and not actually show the real-time render. This here, this
Yeah.
Dark Gladiator is exactly the same. This is an incredibly nice beauty shot, decent lighting, and like
Yeah.
maybe in the actual game, we're not going to have lighting this good, right? Like, because lighting's expensive.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just probably just a standard render straight out of Toolbag with some maybe light touch up, right? It's not a big ray
Yeah.
traced cycles render, and that's the key point, right? So we present the work in a way that indicates we understand the engine, and then she shows some technical data here, right? We have a wireframe here, so we can see that's like step one. We need to see the topology, and we look at the topology,
Yeah.
and we go, right, can this animate? Perfect. This can absolutely animate. Fingers are good. Fingers are good. The arm's good.
Yeah.
She has an incredibly good sense of mesh economy, right? Because she's collapsing loops she doesn't
Yeah.
need. She expands them, and she's only doing them in areas that aren't going to be like, you know, high defamation. Shoulders, really
Yeah.
good edge flow, right? Pecs, really good edge
Yeah.
flow. Neck is perfect. So she establishes my wireframe is perfect. So that's like one checkbox done, right? Triangle count,
Yeah.
not too low, not too high, right? Like this is you know, whether or not
Pertinent information.
yeah,
The higher up.
yeah, exactly, right? Like 46k for a character. It could be too low if it's for like a fighting game where there's only two characters on the screen, but it's probably not. This is probably for an action RPG. And so
It
now
looks awesome. So
yeah, and it looks
if
perfect,
she's managed
right?
to achieve this
Yes.
with 46,000
And
tries, then
yes, and the key point is she's not just saying, oh, well, these are the tries that I used. It's the tries and the wireframe. So looking at these two, we go, right, well, these triangles are clearly utilized very effectively. She has used her budget very well, right? Laid them out very well. We also see 5 UV sets, right? So she's also hinting like, I have a little bit more like more technical knowledge. I know when to split like my models apart.
Are these... I was going to say, these UV sets, they're not like the texture pack that you would be exporting. These are
yes.
like...
They are.
She's done... Okay.
It's...
But she's achieved those 5 separate UV sets by, like... For example, with the mushroom, if I do his weapon...
Yeah.
As a completely separate mesh, and it doesn't share the same material with... body, and it's its own, that would be one UV set, and like his body would be a second UV set.
Yeah, and she's laid them out here like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's really just a presentation thing. They all
I think she's kind of gone.
is what I'm.
I think she's coloured them quite well, where like the yellow border on the
Yes.
top one corresponds with the yellow things, and like,
Yes.
I really like that like touch of like that's all the pink stuff, that's all the blue stuff. Like,
Yeah, and like potentially these were split by surface shader, maybe. Like, long story short, she's aware of like when and how to split textures and for what reasons, right? So like this sheet
yeah,
presents very well to any hiring manager or any hiring individual who was told
yeah,
you need to see they basically they'll be told like the portfolio needs to show a wireframe, it needs to show a triangle count, and it needs to show the textures. If it shows at least those
yeah.
and the quality looks good, you can shortlist them. That's basically the instructions, right?
Okay,
So we go, okay, looks good, looks very good. Oh,
pick,
oh,
pick,
perfect. Okay, good.
pick.
Okay, yep, yep. Yeah, all good. Next, shortlist. Oh, they
Okay,
can animate too? Oh, that's awesome. Shortlist. You know what I
awesome.
mean? Like, that's basically the way it's going to go. So
Are
this
you
is why I use this portfolio as like an example. It's like, ah, my God, such a good portfolio. Yeah.
are you happy for me to do that with the like if he's like say he's got a belt and his weapon to be like different
The way that
different
I
materials? I know you
want you
said
to
he's
think
got that
about
one
this,
material.
as we start getting really like, so this mushroom guy is just a cute little mushroom introductory guy. He's not like this
Yes, yeah,
massive gladiator boss character or something like that. So what I
yes,
want you to do is like, if there is an iconic prop that they have, that your mushroom guy has, like a weapon, right?
yeah,
Or like, again, we're not trying to cheat is the mindset you've got to get into. Think about the type of game this little mushroom guy could be in. Maybe it's a hack and
yeah,
slash RPG where they have different weapons equipped. Maybe one of them has a magical
yes.
staff and the other has a bow. In that case,
Mm-hmm.
totally perfectly fine to have like a texture set for the weapon and a texture set for
Separate.
the mushroom.
Yeah.
But we don't want to cheat by being like, oh, I just needed more texture space to make his shoulder pads look better. So I just gave his shoulder pads like a material and a UV set.
Okay.
Right? We would want to
So it's
more
maybe good to give like a
intelligently.
little use case.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Like it would potentially be good for this portfolio to have just a very small paragraph on one of them. They explained the use case for like
Yeah.
model that she's created and
So,
then
well,
explain those things.
I mean, in terms of our
Maybe
mushroom
that's-
character, right? That we always want to, and again, actually, I want to show you down here. Immediately, we show here's the body. It's 4K that we're working at. We use these maps: albedo, normals, roughness, metallic, translucency. Bang, 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 bang.
Okay.
And we have another texture set for the hood and tentacles, right? When
Okay.
working on characters like this that need to be really like a high fidelity, a lot
A
of the
lot
time,
going on. Yeah.
yeah, like maybe 4K is not enough. We actually need like two texture sets to
8K
capture the
or
resolution we need. So that would make
yeah.
sense. Like typically for this game, for a game character like this, we would probably just roll with one material set, but it's totally possible that they were like, you know what, I just needed more resolution, and for a hero character like this that's designed to win, I'm pretty sure she did win, I think. Yeah, won an award for this. It's like, it's totally
Yeah.
valid to pull out all the stops, but you wouldn't
Okay.
do like one material for the crown, one material for the face, one material for the arm, one material for the
No,
chest, right? Because that's
you would just
film.
do like break it into
Yeah,
like say maybe if I did like a belt and a oh no, I guess because the belt if the belt's always going to be on him, I guess it also
exactly,
comes
right?
down to that use case. Like maybe her crown and tentacles weren't in a shot, or
Yeah,
there was
potentially,
going to
right?
be a part where it was, and yeah,
So
okay,
with your mushroom guy, right? If you want to give him gear, like a hat, or like that's
yeah,
customizable,
yeah,
or a weapon that's customizable, in that circumstance,
yeah,
it's appropriate to have a unique texture set. But show, don't tell. So if you want to imply this, make a bow and arrow, right? And then also make a little leaf staff and have both. Show both on the portfolio, right?
okay.
And so now the hiring manager looking at your work is going, oh, they understand, like, you know,
That's
how
why
to
there's the
allocate
two.
resources.
Yeah,
Yes. Versus,
okay,
I just used more because I couldn't get my unwrap and texel density dense enough to pull off
yeah.
what I was trying to do, right? So, but
But
yeah,
technically, if because he's like a simple little dude, and if he was always like you said, he's got his sword that he always has, like
yes,
it's a set sword, you would or a set like outfit, or like he's always wearing a little vest or something. You
yeah,
would probably include that in the body material.
exactly, yeah, pretty much. It's a judgment call,
And
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 you know, it's becoming easier these days. But yes, basically,
to am I right in thinking to facilitate that you would unwrap the body and the vest at the same time, so
Yeah.
they were.
Yeah.
Then
well, they need
you
to
could move them around on
share.
that same UV map
Yeah, exactly.
because
Because
they
if
need
their
to share that
texture's going to be
UV space
same,
because
yeah,
they're sharing that material.
yeah. Because
Okay,
our UVs,
okay,
right?
okay.
Our UV, like in our human brain, we have them as separate concepts. But think of the UV and the texture kind of as
Mhm,
one. They are the same thing. The point of the UVs is to
mhm.
encode a texture into 3 dimensions.
Yeah,
So when we think of UVs, we're thinking of textures at the same time. There's not like
yeah.
concept A and concept B. They're kind of the same. You
They're
know?
not two separate. Yeah,
Yeah. Think
yeah,
about it that way. That might
yeah.
help. But yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I hope that answers a lot of your
Clears up a
questions.
lot of things. I was definitely going to do it wrong. So thank you again for you, yeah, for your time and for going over it with me.
Yeah, that's all good. I'm keen to see what you make. Like next time we chat, like if you've made any progress on that sort of
Yeah,
stuff, feel free to like book it in and we'll
yeah,
go over the work and see what you've got. All
yeah.
right.
I'm going to see how far I get. Has anyone booked anything in? How are the other sessions going? All good?
Yeah, yeah, they're perfectly fine. It's a bit sparse, so like feel free to chuck in like a
Awesome.
Monday or whatever. Like it's totally fine. Yeah.
Oh, I think literally your Monday at 3 is the only one that's gone. So maybe I'll grab Tuesday. That gives me an
Yeah.
extra day.
Perfect.
I'm going to grab Tuesday just
Yep. Yeah, no drama.
assuming that I'm going to be like a good chunk of the way
Yeah. And what we'll want to do
done.
as well is like I'm probably gonna try and commission some 2D art for the course. There's a couple 2D
Okay.
artists between the mentees, but you know maybe I'll try and commission something, and
Yeah.
it'll be good to have like a standard little character where people can make like little different outfits and those sorts of things for them and experiment. But ultimately, when you do your portfolio, you desperately want to have like unique stuff that's
Unique
not
characters.
tutorial
Yeah.
because and this is what's really annoying.
Yeah.
The tutorial work, it just carries a stigma of like, oh, well, they weren't
Well, all I'm going to
confident,
say
kind of thing. Mm?
is that you know that I never go by halves with my homework. So
Yeah, you can go ham.
I'm excited to,
So yeah,
yeah, I'm excited to show you what I've done.
yep. Once you do
I'm
this
not,
little
I'm not going
mushroom
to do
guide,
any spoilers.
yeah, perfect. Once you do the mushroom guide, we'll start getting into like skinning them and like starting to animate them because
Yeah.
like at that point you really are starting to
Yes.
close all of the gaps in your knowledge and you're getting to the point where you can make real time
By
art like fully.
skinning,
Hmm?
do you mean by skinning? Do you mean like rigging and weight painting? Is that like
So
a
we won't
slang
get into
term
it so
or?
much at the moment, but there's the long and the short of it is we have skinning and then we have rigging, right? They're sort of two fields.
Okay.
Very
And
similar.
what's
Similar and
skinning?
related tools, but different. So skinning is the process of weight, like matching your verts to your bones by virtue of their weights, right? Weight painting,
Yeah.
vertex groups, these sorts of
Yeah.
things. That's what skinning is called as a job. When someone's like, hey,
Okay.
can you make sure that that character is skinned by the end of the day? They're not talking about rigging.
I mean,
They're talking about the
they
bones
mean weight.
and the weights. Yep, and testing
Do
this.
you not have to?
Mm,
Because I equate rigging
yeah.
as like adding your arm, like yeah, adding like your
Yeah.
armature, adding your
No.
bones.
Nope.
Because you would obviously need. How would you weight paint if you didn't have like a skeleton to weight paint
So
to?
this is people do this all the time. There's this massive like false equivalence between these two. Rigging and skinning are different skills. They are not the same skills and they're not the same job. They often find a lot of overlap because typically you wouldn't hire someone to just skin something, right? You would hire them to skin
Yeah,
and rig something, right?
yeah.
A rig per se, like specifically the rig, is the series of controls and other mechanical configuration of helper objects that move and deform a skinned skeleton. Right? So the
So
bones are the
is that?
skeleton, the rig is all the helper
Yeah,
functionality, shapes, and
that's
constraints around it.
so in Blender using like Rigify, which is my only real
Yes.
reference for rigging. That would be when you actually created I can't remember what they call it, create rig, or you do all the bones and then you actually create like
Yeah.
the rig that's got all like the rings and the loops and everything around the arms and whatnot.
Yeah. So
Would a skinner would a skinner create the bones to then like weight paint to? Like
pretty
what
much,
would
probably most of the
the
time.
skinning person do?
Sometimes it'll be done by someone else. Some, but you know, it's a bit
Okay.
here and there. But the like, if you look at these two objects on my screen, do you see these? This is a Rigify Meta rig. Oh, can you see that?
I'm just pulling you up.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a
Oh, yeah.
Rigify
No, I can see.
meta rig,
Yeah,
right? But just ignore
yeah,
for now that it's a meta rig and just assume that this is like just a regular skeleton. These are the
yeah. That
bones
you've just made.
these are the bones that the meshes will be weighted
Yeah.
to. The process of matching
Yes.
the mesh to the skeleton is referred to as skinning, right? This is one thing.
That's the Skinner's
This
job. Okay.
yeah, I mean, it's look in 2025. There's not really like two people, but there will be sometimes. Like they'll just say like, "Hey, I need you to fix
Yeah,
this
I've
rig on
always
this
seen
character."
this as part of the same
Yeah,
process.
it's
Like
it's in the
this has always
same
been rigging to me.
yeah, it's in the same like field. You know what I mean? Like there's a fair amount of overlap, but they
Yeah,
are different.
yeah.
They are different, right? This here
Okay.
is the rig, right? Like this here, when we
Yeah.
move these, there's all these constraints
Oh,
and
yeah,
like IKs and relationship and drivers that will
yeah.
eventually drive and deform the
The
actual
bones.
skeleton. Like this here is the
Yeah,
skinned skeleton, and these are the rig. This is the rig
yeah.
around it. So when someone says, I need you to rig this character, your first question will usually be like, is it skinned? Like, is it already skinned?
Does it have a skeleton?
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
they'll say
And
like,
basically, that isn't skinned.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then they'll
Okay.
say like, yeah, it's already skinned. We've already got. We just need it rigged, and you're like, okay, cool. And then you go in
Okay.
and create the
Okay.
rig, right? So
Rig.
they are
Got ya.
very interrelated concepts, but they are different, right? So keep that in
And the
mind.
weight painting would fall to the Skinner.
Well, a lot of the time it just falls to the rigger anyway, because like
Okay.
in
Got ya.
2025, where the skill ceiling is now
It's
so
the same
high,
kind of person. Yeah.
the line
Yeah.
has become blurred such that riggers tend to just also
Yeah.
do skinners because like skinning
I think
because you
that's
may as
probably
well.
why I've
Yeah, whereas like in
always kind of
in
seen it about the
pipelines that
same
I
flow.
exist in, I always really appreciate it when the character artist gets to do the skinning because like they can guarantee that the mesh is flawless like for that, but that's not always going to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, long story short, a technical animator, like a technical artist,
Hmm.
and then in brackets rigging, right? Technical artist parentheses rigging will tend to rig and skin everything they do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever have situations? I know you said obviously like your role, the technical artist, is kind of the closest thing to like a generalist. But do you ever get artists that can do all of that? So they'll end up doing most of the workflow of like a character themselves, or is there
So
always that like hand like
this really shits me off because that's where I exist. I kind of call myself a hyper generalist because I can do everything well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas like typically generalist
Yeah.
has been a looked down upon term because generalist just means bad at
Yeah.
everything. Whereas
those
I'm like, no,
specifying?
I
Yeah.
exist in an area where I'm actually pretty good at everything. I have been
Yeah.
noticing, and this is just maybe I'm completely wrong, and this is just bias, but I have been noticing on a lot of job postings recently that they are looking for senior generalists or tech artists
Okay.
brackets generalist. It's really weird. They're like,
Generalists.
we're looking for a
Okay.
specialist technical artist who is a generalist, and you're
That's
like,
good for me.
what? So
That's kind of
yeah, and I
where
think
I
that
would
this
like
is
to lead myself.
yeah, this is indicative of like a few things. One, the job market is getting even more competitive. They are now looking not to hire specialists who are really good at one thing. They are looking to hire generalists who are really good at everything, right?
Specialists who are good at
Yeah,
everything.
and two,
Yeah.
the tools keep getting better, and like as the tools get better, and as more
Yes.
automation hits our lives, we are expected to do more and more, right? So like this is why
Yeah.
you're continually at like a wave front of skill expansion, and you are always on a cutting edge, learning more and
Yeah.
more and more and more. And if you don't, you're
Yeah.
largely fucked, you know. So yeah,
Gonna get
again,
left behind.
this is just
Yeah.
an observation
Okay.
that I have made
Well, that's good for me. I
recently.
mean,
Yeah.
the main reason I ask is because it scares me a little bit, like having to like pigeonhole into just doing
Well,
like one like part of
yeah.
the process. I think
So this is
in a
where
perfect
you
world.
have to make a judgment call for your career, right? That
Yeah. Yeah.
being the generalist that's good at everything is incredibly hard to do, relatively looked down upon. But when you do get those jobs that embrace that skill set, you are the most important person in the room because they're like, oh my god, this person is like the
Yeah.
linchpin of our whole operation because they're like holding up
Yeah.
5 departments. So you become incredibly
Yeah.
important, even if the industry hasn't yet learned to respect those people.
It,
Conversely, and this is
yeah.
wildly unfair, the people who are incredibly good at one thing, like the best character
One
sculpting
thing.
artists in the world, right? Or
Yeah.
like the best environment artists in the world, they get paid like medium wages. Like the seniors and the leads don't. They get pretty good wages. But the people doing the majority of the work who are incredibly good, incredibly talented, practiced,
Yeah.
and like specialized tend to not get that great of an opportunity. It's kind of a load of
Mhm.
fucking bullshit when you really think about it, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah, you know, what you choose to do with your career is largely up to you, but you will have to do one
Yes.
thing, and that is you will have to be good at least one specific thing,
Everything.
right? Like, you know, so my thing that I like to do is like
That's
hard
one of
surface and
me.
props, right? Because I know that
Yeah.
I could function as like a senior in those departments. My resume
Yes.
and position in general is then made more attractive by me being able to say, hey, not only am I really good at that one thing, I'm also a pretty damn good technical artist. I understand gameplay code, and I can
Yeah.
even function on like the technical design engineering team. Because of my technical background and my ability to write code, I often build rapport very readily with engineers, and I can communicate between like departments very
Yes.
well. And that naturally makes me a team player. Not just something that I'm saying for the interview. Like, it's clear in my skill set that I am a great communicator and a team
Yeah.
player. That whole amble at the end is only facilitated by me having a rock solid foundation in some area of like art, right? So even if you want to be a
Yes.
generalist, you should pick an area of art that really clicks with you, really resonates with you. That might be characters, it might
Yeah.
be props and hero work,
It's
or
just
it
yeah.
might be environments.
Oh, yeah.
Pick one, get good at that, and then start to sprinkle the generalism in as well, right? Like,
Okay.
that's really in Valve they call them like T-shaped individuals, where they have a really long vertical
Yeah.
axis and then an also pretty wide horizontal axis, you know? That's kind of a good
Okay.
way of thinking about it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome.
Anyway, I mean, I'm starting to lose my voice, so I should probably dip.
So sorry. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you again.
No, it's all good.
Have a good rest of your night.
And yeah, I'll probably just upload those vids like straight to YouTube, just so that people have like an idea of, I guess, like, I mean, it was a very good Q&A session. So yeah,
Good.
yeah,
Awesome.
awesome. All right, yeah, thanks very much. You have a
Hi,
good one.
everyone.
All right.
Yeah, you too.
All right.
All right. Have a good night.
Yeah, all good. See
Bye.
ya.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.